Okay, so our last story, now this one I'm putting out there with a caveat. I have absolutely no proof of any of this at all. This is something that has been like a half conspiracy theory, half really cool story idea that's been cooking in my mind for a long time. I'm always a little more nervous when I put out episodes where I'm like, there's no proof of this conspiracy theory, not because I just think it's gibberish, but because I always worry that it's actually true, and the reason why there's no proof of it, because everyone who tries to talk about it ends up getting shot. But I remember when this happened, I thought, this is really bizarre that they're really concerned about this. So, back in 2009, the governments of the world, the United Nations was involved in this, said, we're going to move away from analog television, and we're going to move to digital television. We're going to do everything digital. And the US government had a program where they actually gave people money to buy a digital converter. I remember when it was going on, and everyone was getting their vouchers and stuff like that, and I thought, why does the government care how good our broadcast signal is? Why is the government actually giving its citizens money to buy a digital converter box? Now, the reason why we switched from analog to digital, the official reason, is twofold. One, it's for better picture quality and sound, and channels could broadcast more programming on like a single channel. So you can have like channel 3 and then channel 3.1 and 3.2 and all that. And the other thing is they wanted to free up the analog airwaves for emergency personnel. And nobody questioned that. And again, this was a worldwide shift. The United Nations said, we need to have everyone over to digital by this date, and countries all over the world switched to it. Not all of them. Some of them, it was a phase in. But why did the United Nations care about the analog signal? Was the jamming up too much so a cop couldn't pick up their radio and say, I need backup, and instead of like reruns of Welcome Back Kotter are playing on it? It didn't make sense to me. It still doesn't make sense to me. But here is my conspiracy theory. Again, no proof to back this up, but it's just a hunch. It's a fanciful hunch. Whenever shows are broadcast in analog form, they're basically broadcast as like a circle, and they spread out. Now, low-power broadcasts cannot penetrate the ionosphere of the Earth, and they just stay trapped here. But high-powered broadcasts can leave the ionosphere of Earth, and then they move through space at the speed of light. There's actually a really cool website I'll link in the show notes where you can see, like, on this day, what star system would be, what show this particular star system would be receiving today. And it's kind of guesswork. But they're saying, a star 44 light years out right now would be watching, something that happened 44 years ago. And they'll show you a little YouTube clip. It's just kind of a neat novelty website. Because once it leaves the atmosphere, it's moving at the speed of light. The first most powerful broadcast to leave Earth would have been, well, according to Carl Sagan, it was the Nuremberg rallies, Hitler's Nuremberg rallies. But that's actually not true. It was Hitler, it still was Hitler, but it was at the 1939 Olympic Games. I think it was 1939. It doesn't matter. It was at the Olympic Games. Do they have Olympic Games in odd years? I think so whatever, 1938. The point is Hitler was the first thing to be broadcast that escaped the atmosphere and went into space. But right now, let's see, if we went 50 years back, that would put us around, you're like, Jason, don't do math right now. That'd put us somewhere around like 1968, somewhere around there, yeah. So they'd be watching footage of America and Vietnam and stuff like that if they were 50 light years out. The question is, really they say, the thing is like, the way that our transmissions are based is because they're that circle, that and not a direct beam. Even if they do get 50 light years out and picked up by something, it'll be very diffuse. It'll be very hard to separate from background information. Now, we've tried to make a beam of information, the SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial, whatever. They look for aliens. They wanted to make a beam, a super powerful beam, and they shot it up out of the atmosphere. And they said this way it won't diffuse over, the light years. But if they want to watch the video footage of it, the aliens are going to need a array that's 7 miles wide. And if they just wanted the audio, because audio tends to lose its itself more, or if they want to watch the video with the audio, they would need an array that was 500 miles wide. So even with this super concise beam, it would be really hard to pick up. So our I Love Lucy episodes, really, they don't have a chance of being picked up. So the first theory that I had was that the reason why we're switching to analog and digital was basically to go black, to go dark. Cable doesn't send out the signals, streaming doesn't send out the signals, internet doesn't send out the signals. It's just these big, high-powerful broadcasting analog towers that would. And so if the government said, listen, we're letting everyone know where we're at, and we're just sending out wave after wave after wave of information of where we're at, and it would be equivalent of you're basically hiding in a forest from a bunch of predators. You're lost in a dark forest surrounded by wolves, and you don't know where the wolves are, and they don't know where you are, and then you break out your boombox and start playing Steve Winwood top volume. And now they know where you're at, and you still don't know where they are until it's too late. They're too close. So the first idea was that we're going to go dark. And then you would have to roll into that all of this SETI building the beam and stuff like that's all fake, that they didn't really do that. The reason why that theory didn't necessarily wash with me is because assuming that NASA's not totally lying to us and all that stuff, we've sent out satellites, we've sent out Voyager, SETI's doing their thing and stuff like that. But what if the reason why we switched to digital television is to not hide ourselves from some other race out there, but to hide them from us? Because it would work both ways. If a broadcast signal was headed towards Earth, the analog stations could pick it up. Now, and I did earlier say you would need a concentrated beam and a receiving array that, 5 to 500 miles long, or 7 to 500 miles long, whatever it was. And that's based on our technology. But what if their technology that's broadcasting is far more powerful and it could be picked up by your local neighborhood antenna? They're broadcasting an analog signal. They haven't moved to digital. And we've detected it coming towards this planet. And the step was the United Nations saying, listen, there's one of two things that are going to happen. One day, people around the world are going to turn on their televisions, and they're going to begin receiving these transmissions from an alien race, or we just take all of our analog towers offline, and everyone has to do digital. So those waves just pass right through the planet, and we never know that they came. Now, there are still low-power analog antennas in some countries. There are still things like ham radio operators, CB radios, and things like that. But there's a big difference between having, say, 5 billion people watching a signal and 1% of them actually getting enough clarity of what the image looks like to be able to make a determination like something's really wrong here, versus 500 million people on their ham radios, low power antennas, CB radios, what have you, and 1% of them picking up that signal. It's a lot easier to hide if you just say, oh, no, that was just some glitch. But if some guy's just working on his ham radio and one day he picks up, he may log it as something weird, he may record it, but that's a lot easier to dispute than the population of the world picking that up. Because here's the thing. When we talk about aliens, we imagine them to be, you have the fictional aliens where they have their ships, they fly around, they blow stuff up. And then you have the aliens that people say exist, like gray aliens or reptilians or the blonde white people, what are they called? The Luminarians or something. The Pleiadians. And they seem to be, the reptilians are supposedly evil, but it's a very antiseptic evil. It's a very human evil. But imagine getting a broadcast from an alien planet. Imagine if an alien planet saw the Nuremberg rallies, or an alien planet saw news footage of the Vietnam War. Could you even imagine the horrors that could come from an alien planet of their broadcasts? We always see the Greys as kind of just walking around their ship, kind of tooling around with instruments, or the Reptilians, kind of like V, where they're kind of this regal enemy that eat people, but then they also walk on two legs and stuff like that, and they shapeshift and all that type of stuff. But what if we saw a television broadcast, a true television broadcast from an alien planet? What type of evil and filth and truly, like, it's alien. Our brains, even a reptilian, is familiar to us. But something from another planet that is evolved along a completely different path that shares none of our DNA, just like I was talking about on the previous segment, can you imagine something that you can't imagine, that you have no concept for? That's what it would be like to see an alien broadcast. Would we even be able to recognize things like individuals in a crowd, some sort of narrative, some sort of character? We wouldn't. You would see an alien broadcast and it would just fill you with revulsion because it is something that is so unnatural for a human to see. You can show me a video of Greys dissecting a human being. You can show me a video of a reptilian eating somebody. Those are still familiar things because I've seen things be devoured and I've seen dissections in science class. But imagine seeing something alien, doing something alien to another alien thing. It would be the definition of H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu-level horror. Even if on their planet it was something completely mundane, to us it would be so disturbing. On their planet it could be the equivalent of a sitcom, but to us we would see nothing but pure horror in it. Because what we're experiencing, what we're seeing and hearing is truly incomprehensible to us. It is on another planet with another life form, another culture, another language, you could go, could you even see that they were talking to each other? Or would it just be horror upon horror upon horror? Imagery and sound that was coming from this alien planet. Whether or not they would ever reach us wouldn't matter. But if we got this alien broadcast and we saw these incomprehensible, inhuman things, it would fill us with such dread we would never want to go out. We would never want to see what's out there. Because we would know that the universe isn't full of life like us, with 2 arms and 2 legs and brains and eyes, and they have power struggles and they're fighting for control of Earth, and the reptilians are over here, and the Greys are here, and the Conformers are here, and the Pleiadians are here, and they have these structures. You have the Starship Athena, you have all this stuff, 2012, Antarctica ice bases. All these things are human concepts. We see the universe in a very Star Trek, Star Wars type of way, where you could go to a bar and sit next to an alien and not throw up because he's so gross and the smell of him is so toxic because he has a different evolutionary path on a different planet that you've never been to. We see it, it'll be like, hey, Spock. Spock would stink like a mofo. Spock would be the most disgusting person you could... Well, maybe not Spock because he's half human, but you know what I mean? Like, you would have these... Well, you wouldn't be able to bang another alien, but you would have these huge differences. It's just like we do it here. When we build a robot that looks too human, or we make CGI that looks too human, it's called the uncanny valley. It makes us sick. Times that by 1,000, and you have what it would be like to look at an alien broadcast. So is that why we went dark? Not to hide us from them, but to hide them from us. Because if we knew what was truly out there in the darkness of space, forget the probes, forget SETI, forget sending these messages of recordings of Beethoven and pictures of a man and a woman. That would all be done in an instant. And humanity would be that kid in a forest, surrounded by wolves, and just trying to close their eyes and hope that they are never found. That was a clip from our daily podcast, Dead Rabbit Radio. Dead Rabbit Radio is available anywhere that you listen to podcasts. It's daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime news. If you want to hear the full episode that this clip came from, check the link below. Please like and subscribe. And hit that little bell, too. That does some magical stuff. Thanks, guys.